So even though both houses of the Polish parliament are currently in session, still the most important topic here in the Polish parliament is Judge Tomasz Schmidt, who requested a political asylum in Belarus. Now, to discuss this matter, joining me is Mr. Krzysztof Kwiatkowski, a Polish senator.
Senator, Minister Sikorski calls it treason. Would you also put it in those words?
Yes, for a very simple reason. Polish interests are the interests of a democratic state. Belarus is a dictatorial state that keeps political prisoners, including Poles like Andrzej Poczobut, in prison. And if any Polish citizen goes there and praises this undemocratic state and criticizes his own homeland, where the authorities are democratically elected and the various state institutions act in accordance with the law, then I have no doubt whatsoever that we can talk about treason. Here the context is even worse. As a judge, Mr. Schmidt had ex officio access to legally protected secrets. One of his duties was deciding on appeals against the denial of access to legally protected secrets. Such decisions, whether negative or positive, are being made based on material from the Polish security services. It is frightening that such a person had a great career during the rule of law and justice, was a head in the office of Minister Zbigniew Ziobro, and a director in the so-called Neo-National Council of the Judiciary, and later a judge in such a sensitive department.
As a former justice minister, do you have any solutions to improve the system so that such situations do not happen again?
I strongly believe that the law needs to be changed. For more than 20 years, there have been regulations saying that a judge, by virtue of his office, has access to legally protected secrets. In my opinion, at least in the group of judges who come into contact with legally protected secrets, that is, judges who, for example, issue permits for the use of operational techniques, and the permits are issued on the basis of requests from the Polish security services, where there's a well-founded fear that someone is cooperating with foreign intelligence. I have no doubt that such a person should be vetted. I don't think it should concern all judges, because there's no need to check the judges who deal with family matters, but at least the group of judges who have access to this information should be checked. The law needs to be changed in this respect because, as you can see, the situation with Judge Schmidt has set off alarm bells that the existing system needs to be improved.
Because such a judge is potentially a perfect spy for Russia or Belarus?
A perfect spy because, first of all, he was exempt from vetting procedures. Any other person who has access to legally protected secrets goes through such a procedure. People who hold important public positions go through a vetting procedure that checks a person who is to hold a high state position. And Judge Schmidt would not pass through such a procedure. Why? For example, we know from his asset declaration that despite his very high salary by Polish standards, he held a managerial position. He still holds a formal position. He is now serving as a judge at an administrative court. However, it turns out that he had no assets in principle and had several $100,000 in debt and financial obligations. Yes, such a person is susceptible to blackmail, and the vetting procedure, among other things, is about checking the person's assets, either whether he has any assets that are not covered by legitimate income, or whether he has liabilities or financial problems that can make such a person susceptible to blackmail, for example, by foreign services.
Apart from these financial issues, did anything else indicate that Judge Schmidt was planning such an escape?
One thing, in my opinion, should have absolutely set off alarm bells. In one of today's newspapers, I read an interview with former Deputy Justice Minister Łukasz Piebiak. He is the right hand of Zbigniew Ziobro, the one who was fired from the government after the Hader scandal. Together with Judge Schmidt, he was the organizer of a WhatsApp group, Caste or Anti-Caste, in which judges were vilified and in which, for example, the well-known case of sending postcards to the then First President of the Supreme Court, Małgorzata Gersdorf, with words commonly considered vulgar and abusive, was prepared. But there's one more interesting thing in this interview. Łukasz Piebiak, when asked if he was surprised that Judge Schmidt found himself in Belarus as a part of the Lukashenko regime, said that he was not, because Judge Schmidt had already been emotionally unstable and in general praised the East. He was fascinated by Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, by the fact that you can do business there, make money. After something like this, such a person should immediately be reported to be checked by the services. And I believe that Mr. Łukasz Piebiak, as a public official, Deputy Minister of Justice, should have immediately filed a motion. Yet we are dealing with a person who does not give guarantees for the performance of those public duties related either to important positions in the Ministry of Justice, or in the National Council of the Judiciary, or in the judiciary, which gave us citizens the belief that such a person pursues Polish interests, and not the interests of the Russians, Belarusians, or any other services.
Poland is an especially vulnerable target because we border directly not only Ukraine but also Belarus and even Russia through the Kaliningrad region. So we are a particularly attractive target, especially for the Russians. But such situations, as well as cyber attacks, are not just a Polish problem.
The problem is broader. The Russians, it's been proved, have interfered in the electoral processes in the United States, in France, and we know that they have supported in various ways, well, in France, presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. They have a very close relationship with Viktor Orban, the very same Viktor Orban who blocked the reimbursement to Poland of several hundred million euros for equipment and ammunition supplied to Ukraine by the European Union. And Poland is indeed an extremely important country. We share borders with Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. There is no other country in the world like it, because Poland is home to the military infrastructure of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The airport in Rzeszów, Jasionka, is the place through which military aid is delivered to the war in Ukraine. It is also the Polish border that prevents access to the Kaliningrad region via Belarus, which is effectively a Russian protectorate. Yes, from the point of view of Russia's aggressive policy, Poland is one of the main targets.
The opposition says that by wanting supervision over the special services, the current government is paralyzing their work.
We do have a problem, of course, because the security services for the past 8 years have been used for political purposes. Today we know about Pegasus, about the fact that with this spyware, not only were opposition politicians wiretapped, but, for example, 2 brave women, female soldiers, military police officers. Why? Only because they reported cases of sexual harassment by superiors. It turns out that during the Law and Justice rule, Pegasus was used to wiretap women who had the courage to report sexual harassment, but there was no vetting of a person who held a leadership position either in the Ministry of Justice or in the National Judicial Council.
Senator, thank you for speaking with us.
So as you can hear, shocking news from Poland. Polish judge, a hero, if you will, of a so-called hater scandal, seeking asylum in Belarus.